Hi, this is Erica Merrill, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. I am very excited to have with us today Fred Ruotolo. He works for the Stewart Law Group. They are a family law firm out of Phoenix, Arizona, and they are actually all over Arizona. So you are coming to us today, I believe, from the Scottsdale office. I want to welcome you to the show today, Fred.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So, today we're going to talk just a little bit about you, and you have a lot of interesting things to talk about. I was looking over the notes, and well, let's get right down to it. Let's talk about where you grew up. We'll start simple.
Okay, that's easy enough. Well, I was born in New York, and apparently people out here could spot that because apparently I still have an accent. So I was born in the Bronx, actually, which I'm rather proud of. But I was only in the Bronx for 6 months. So because after that, my parents moved out to Long Island. So really, I grew up out on Long Island. When I was 14 years old, my father got an offer from Motorola, and we all moved out here. Back then, and this would have been 1979, back then, Motorola was the biggest employer pretty much for the Phoenix area, if not for the whole state. So I've been here since 1979, and this is the only state I'd want to live in.
That is pretty impressive, and actually it explains a lot because you do seem a little more like a New Yorker than someone from Arizona. Just you think fast, you talk fast, and I could absolutely see you in that fast-paced city. But I'm so happy that you are happy where you are because it's certainly got some better weather. That is for sure.
Better weather, but not as good as the food back east. as every New York transplant out here asks, where's the food? You're gonna have to go back to New York for that.
Well, you've got a few good places out there. I know that for sure.
Yeah, now we do. Back in the 70s, 79, early 80s, there was a smaller population.
Oh yeah, you know what? I didn't think of that. I could absolutely imagine it. Nowadays, everything gets built up, and you've got the chains, some pretty good chains out there, and I'm sure you've got some nice independent restaurants as well.
Correct.
So now you are you do a lot of divorces, and I just wondered, do you have any personal experience with divorce? Anyone in your family or you yourself?
My parents been married till this day. Thank God, both my parents are alive. Thank God, and they are still happily married. The first divorce in our immediate family, my brother did get divorced. In fact, I did their divorce, and it was very friendly. In 2017, my wife and I decided to divorce. So I've even done my own divorce. and that too is very friendly. That was finalized in 2018. And I like to say we talk every day. Pretty much every day we still stay in touch. And so we still stay best friends.
Wow. I mean, you should write a book on that. And then you can give it to your clients, how to still be best friends after divorce. I like that idea. And that's inspirational too, because I know a lot of people wish that they could have what you're talking about right now. So that's fantastic. Tell me how it is you got involved in family law, because family law is a very interesting type of law. I like to say you're kind of a referee, and you really get people that it's different than like a business lawyer. They come in and they sometimes it can be emotional, but a lot of times it's a business transaction. In this case, it's not usually the friendliest, and sometimes people are sad. So I mean, you're really dealing with a couple of different types of situations when you handle family law cases. So why don't you tell me, why would you decide to do this?
That's a very funny question, because when I went into law school, I actually remember saying to myself, I'll do pretty much anything but family law. And as it would be, I wound up doing only family law, because I thought I was going to get into, business law, commercial transactions, business representation, maybe do some criminal law. I was interested in personal injury law as well. And I did take a family law class in law school. And that I started changing my mind, because prior to that, I really didn't have any experience with divorce, because no one in my family was divorced at that time. I didn't have friends who were divorced at that time, so it was basically an unknown to me at that time. When I got out of law school, I worked for a small general practice firm in Scottsdale, and they did a little bit of everything. And this would have been in the early 90s. And I started doing a couple of divorce cases there. I was like, wow, this is interesting. This is different than what I thought it would be. And I just started feeling very more comfortable in it. And that was a good experience because, like I said, they did general areas of law. So they also did business law and personal injury. So I noticed I didn't enjoy those areas as much. And I was gravitating more and more to the family law cases. Then when I went out on my own, bankruptcy made up a huge part of my practice because sadly the economy was hurting in the early 90s. And so my phone rang for bankruptcy. I would say bankruptcy made up about 70 to 80% of my practice at that time. As the economy picked up, less bankruptcy calls, more calls for family law. And I just finally doing more and more family law. Just loved it. I just felt comfortable doing it. And then probably by the late 90s, I did nothing but family law. I limited my practice to only family law. And I've been doing only family law since the late 90s. And I became a family law specialist as well about 6 years ago. Why I do it, I just enjoy, I just feel comfortable doing it. I like doing it.
Well, I mean, and it's got to be a little more interesting. I mean, you meet a lot of interesting people, and it's certainly not boring.
Correct.
Now, can you tell us, I mean, people come in to see you all the time. What are a couple of the most frequently asked questions that people have?
That to some extent, that's a tough question. I mean, right out of the gate, the obvious questions is how much is it going to cost and how long will it take? But other than that, the questions don't seem very unique. The people's questions are very common, and it is the obvious. How are we going to divide the house? How are we going to allocate time for the children? And it's rare to see something so specific. The questions tend to be very general at first with the client, unless they have a specific issue, like if they own their own business, or if there's health issues, or if there's a large inheritance that's happened or that's come in. You might get those specific questions. But as far as what's the most common question, probably pretty much how are the assets going to be divided and children issues. How are we going to divide our time with the children?
That makes a lot of sense. Where am I going to live? Where are my kids going to live and when? I mean, those are some of the really big questions for sure. I guess an even better question for me to ask, and I'm sure there's a lot of these, is what are some of the mistakes that people make?
So that's a very good question. I think there's two types of mistakes. One specific with assets or children, but I'd like to take a bigger picture on that if I can. And the bigger picture is their attitude on their approach to the case. I think that's the biggest mistake. Some people are just very angry. Maybe there was infidelity. Maybe there was, hiding of assets. So they have every right to be angry. But if they let that anger cloud their judgment, it's going to greatly hurt them more in the long run. And I think that's the biggest mistake people would make, is just going about this in the wrong way. Going about this for, I hate to use the word revenge, but going about this for revenge purposes, or they want their pound of flesh. and rightly so. That's understandable. But that is really going to hurt how they strategize and think about this case. Because going to this pound of flesh or this just revenge type of situation, it's the Arizona family court is not like we all see on TV with the criminal courts. The criminal courts, you have someone that the state's trying to prove is guilty, and if they're found guilty, the state punishes them. And I think a lot of people might step into their divorce thinking that same mentality, or it's an auto accident case. That person rear-ended my car and he should pay. The Arizona Family Law Court is not like that. It's not a court to punish. And of course, there are situations, there's theft of assets, of course, but generally speaking, the Arizona Family Law Court's not going to punish one spouse for whatever they did in the marriage. So I think if people come to see a client, they're really banging on the table, I want my pound of flesh, they're going to be disappointed, because no matter how hard that lawyer fights, the judge and the law isn't set up to give that to them. Assets and debts are divided 50-50 or equitably, I should say, which turns out usually to be 50-50. And children as well. The court's goal with children is to give both parents as equal time as possible. Of course, there's always exceptions, if a parent has substance abuse issues or so. So when people come in and they want vengeance, the system isn't designed for that. So that, I would say, and I've been doing this since the early 90s, so I've seen a lot. And I have to say, that is the biggest error, is they're coming into this angry. And if they come in angry, it's going to cloud the way they think. And it's going to hurt them in the long run. And I know that might sound kumbaya, touchy-feely. I understand that. But I'm telling people, I tell clients this every day, I've been doing this long enough, and the angry client becomes the bully. So you were once the victim, but now you have become the bully in this litigation, and the judge is more angry at you than the parent who did something wrong, or the party that did something wrong in the first place. And I've seen that time and time again. And I'm talking on and on about this because it's a big soapbox issue with me. So I guess in summary on that, the biggest mistake is just going about this wrong. And by that, I mean just too angry. And that's easy for me to say, because I'm not that spouse who lived in that substance abuse environment, or God forbid, lived in that domestic violence environment, or infidelity. So I understand, but they need to understand that going about this in a take the higher road approach is going to get them a better result.
I mean, I think that's very relevant advice. And what I would say about that is that, honestly, having an attorney be your voice of reason and listening to them when they say, hey, you know what, I understand you really wanted this particular thing to go this way. Can you live with it going the other way? Because it's going to cost you $100,000 in legal fees to fight over one extra day with your child a week, or whatever the case is. Everything in a divorce case has a price tag, and sometimes it's just really not worth fighting over unless they want to get vengeance, like you said. And then it's like, well, is vengeance worth your child's college fund? You got to be reasonable, and that's why they have you.
Right. You hit the nail on the head. And the Maricopa County, I practice in Maricopa County in Arizona, and the lawyers in Maricopa County, we're pretty much all very friendly, and we talk to each other about our good cases and bad cases. And I hear a lot what you just said, where the attorneys say, oh, I had this former client, or the opposing party, they just fought it and spent their children's college fund fighting over something that in the end the judge wasn't even too interested in listening to, or the judge listened to and did what the lawyer had predicted the judge would do in the first place. So yes, it's sad to see people fight over issues that shouldn't be fought over. You got to pick your battles wisely. The term I heard a long time ago, I love, that a lawyer said, I love what he said. He goes, "This is not the hill to die on." And I said, that is a great saying. And trying to tell that to clients, this is not where we should invest our energy and money and time. This is not the hill to die on.
I mean, that is so true. And I'm glad that you said that, because I mean, in the end, you just want to be able to move on and for everything to be fair. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the courts don't care about if you were cheated on, or they care about, to a certain degree, if they spent all the marital funding on cheating. But I mean, besides that, I mean, there's other issues people get really angry about, but I'd say probably money and extramarital affairs, and maybe gambling, some sorts of addictions and abuse. Those can really top the charts. And if children are involved, it's very hard for people not to get super emotional. So do you have any stories that you'd like to share with us, or any special messages that we should know before we let you go today?
As far as stories, you would think I'd have a lot of juicy stories after doing this so long, but it's all pretty boring stuff in the end. One positive story, it goes to the aspect of, what do you fight over? What should you fight over? What should you invest your energy on? And I had a client, and I didn't do their original divorce. He came to me to address post-divorce issues. So this is after the decree was entered. They were divorced for many years. And he was very well-to-do. He had a lot of assets, complex assets. And the decree had a loose end that the wife was entitled to some equity assets, some stock, later, several years after the divorce. And she contacted the husband and said, "I think I'm entitled to this money now." And he said, "We've already paid you out." And so there was a dispute. So I got involved, and we went back and forth, back and forth. We spent hours looking over records, account statements, everything. And this is the good part. He then came to me and said, "You know what, Fred? I had dinner with her the other night. We talked about it. And we said, if I keep the money, when I pass away, it just goes to our son. If I give you the money, when you pass away, it's going to go to our son." So basically, they felt they were just custodians of the money until they passed away for the benefit of their son. So he said, "Just pay her. Just call her lawyer, tell her I'll pay her, and we'll end this." That was a beautiful story. And I said, "You know what? That is a brilliant approach." It wasn't worth it to him to fight it. And in the end, he realized, wait a minute, what am I fighting over? We're just holding this money to the end. Now, granted, he had substantial wealth, so it was easy for him to make that payment. I understand people who don't have that wealth. Hey, that sum of money, I need that to pay my mortgage. I need that to live on. So I understand, but that's the point. This was not the hill for him to die on. For other people, it might be the hill to die on, but it wasn't for him. And he made a very smart decision. He saved tens of thousands of dollars of attorney's fees and aggravation and time, and they lived peacefully after that. So that's again, maybe that's another kumbaya story, but that's probably one of the happier stories I have.
Well, I mean, hey, you know what? This is an inspiration, and it's good to hear stories where things are going right, because certainly everyone's heard the bad stories, and those are the ones that they make the movies about.
Right.
And so I think that this is really good, and I think it's something for people to work toward. I mean, I know it's not always possible, but I think one of the most important things too is that they do have an attorney that is going to really show people what the options are, and tell them, like you said, which things are worth fighting over and which aren't. I mean, I saw somebody's divorce decree once. I won't say whose, but it was a family member's. They were fighting over the lawnmower. I was like, what? They probably spent enough
It's
money to buy 5 lawnmowers with what they, it's crazy.
in law, and again, going back to what I said earlier, how the attorneys in Maricopa County were pretty much friendly with each other, and those are the talks we have in the hallway, out of the earshot of the client, is we scratch our heads and it's like, why are they fighting over the lawnmower? Why are they doing that? And it's a shame, and it's and the lawyers get the bad rap in society of making cases expensive and litigious, but if the public really knew that there's a lot of ethical lawyers out there and they are telling their clients, should you be fighting over this? So, and again, sometimes yes, sometimes we need to go to war. Yes, that we are lawyers, we know that. But also there's times that the best legal advice is let us reach out and try to settle this.
I mean, I think that's great. And that's what the judges want to see anyway, right? I mean, they don't really want to see you fighting over things. They want to see, they throw you back out in the hallway, right? And they make you try to come up with a settlement or get as close as possible because they don't want to make these decisions.
Correct. And most judges will say that at the, usually a divorce case, there'll be a conference with the judge before it goes to trial, for the judge to get a lay of the land on the case. And many judges give that speech. They say, you do not want me deciding how your assets are divided. You do not want me, the judge, deciding how to raise your kids. That's something you guys should be doing on your own. They encourage settlement. In Arizona, there's many platforms to do settlement conferences, mediations, and most divorces are settled. It's a minority of divorces that actually go to litigation. And as you said, the judges don't want to see parties fighting. And you asked about stories. If we have time, this is a great story. And this didn't happen too long ago. And it goes to what you're saying about the judges don't want to fight. I had a case, this wasn't too long ago. I had a case and it was going on and on forever. And day of trial. So we were playing, I had a husband, we were plaintiffs, we're going first. I asked my plaintiff husband client the required foundational questions of, establishing jurisdiction. How long have you lived here? When were you married? So and so. In the middle of that, he started crying. And I said, all right, maybe he's just kind of getting out a little, but he wouldn't stop crying. And then I said to the judge, can we have five minutes? And she said, yes. So we come back in 5 minutes and the judge said, you know what? I've read all the paperwork in this file. I'm familiar with your case. I don't want to do the trial. She says, this is not healthy for this family to do the trial, because what was going to happen? We were going to put my guy on to badmouth mom, and mom was going to go on the stand and badmouth dad. And the judge knew that from the documents we had filed. And she said, I'm not going to do this. We were all stunned. And I guess you could be cynical and said, yeah, the judge had a golf game to go to instead. No, but no, absolutely not. She was very sincere about this and very serious about it. And she said, I want you to try to settle this case. And we did. She vacated the trial. She sent us to a settlement conference and we settled. And it was so much more emotionally and mentally healthy for the parents to settle and have part of making their own final orders without screaming and yelling and bad-mouthing each other in the courtroom and then leaving it to the stranger, the judge, making it. So, kudos to that judge who saw that this was better for the family not to litigate. And again, maybe that's a touchy-feely story and that's not what people expect. And that goes back to what I said earlier about how they enter into this with the wrong frame of mind. But when you have a judge saying she is not going to do the trial because she doesn't think it's healthy for the family and she wants them to go and settle, you could see why I advise clients, you're not going to get your day in court if you think bad mouthing the other parent's going to work. That's not what the judges want to hear. And there's a classic example. Although, again, there's exceptions. Yes, if you have a parent who's substance abuse or, God forbid, domestic violence, yes, those are serious issues. But generally, the settlement approach is a better approach.
I mean, it sounds like it. And then that is absolutely true. The sooner you can get through the divorce, as long as it's fair, the better it is emotionally for everyone, because that's something people don't talk about is, yeah, they know it's emotional, but it takes the emotional part of it, and the stress of it really does affect your body. And if you talk to people, you hear about people getting sick and going to the hospital and having all these issues that they never had before. And it's because they're under a lot of stress, even if they don't outwardly show it all the time. So, I mean, it's definitely better for everyone involved, I would think, if you can take the stress off the table as soon as possible and start the process of healing.
You're so correct. Yes. And even with my divorce, which we were friendly, and I've been doing this for 30 years, so I knew what to expect. But even with my divorce, it did affect me. It just threw me off a little. I was just, irritable, for lack of a better word. It does. It affects you emotionally. Even you might not know it, but it is. You just literally become a different person. It's very sad, and going through the process is very sad. Even when the parties are friendly.
It's so true. And and sometimes things change too. You think it's going well, and then all of a sudden somebody gets engaged or like you're dating someone else, and then you thought you were over it, and all of a sudden you're going crazy again. But and so it's good that you understand all of it. You've seen it all, and that is why it's important to use an attorney like yourself if you have any issues that need to go through family court, because you want the experience. You want lawyers that are going to keep up on what's going on today with the law, because there are changes. And even if there aren't changes in the law, sometimes there's just changes in what's going on in the economy, and you really have to have a handle on the lay of the land, and really what are some of the strategies you can use, and if something's not working, let's go with the next best thing. And that's really where you come into play, and really appreciate the work that you do. I would absolutely encourage anyone to call the Stewart Law Group if they have any questions. And I think that it's amazing what you guys are able to accomplish.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I thank you again for coming on here. I so enjoy our talks, and I hope that you'll come back again soon, because I find everything that you talk about interesting. I didn't know about the dogs. That's fantastic. I have a big love of animals as well, so I can absolutely relate all the excitement.
And those were a stress. Yes, those are the stressor to the marriage. Yes, having all those dogs. Yes.
Well, they're like children, aren't they? I mean, it's not exactly the same, of course. You can leave them alone a lot longer, but they're children.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much again for coming on, and thanks everybody out there for listening. We really appreciate any comments that you have to make on this video or podcast. Just let us know, and also share this if you get a chance to, if you think that this will help anyone that you know. So thanks again, everyone, and thank you so much for coming on, Fred. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Erica.
You're welcome.